podcast. Very excited to talk some DeMar DeRozan, talk about the state of the Chicago Bulls. But first things first, Jason, the first thing I want to ask you, Jason, is I see the White Sox are in the middle of a 20-game losing streak. I see the Chicago Cubs are kind of floundering about in the wild card standings right now. You have the Bulls seemingly in complete disarray, but you have Caleb Williams, you have Devin Hester getting elected to the NFL Hall of Fame. What is the state of Chicago sports right now?
Yeah, mostly pretty terrible. But as you mentioned, the Bears, who are usually terrible, might be the one beacon of hope going right now.
How is that? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I was like, the Blackhawks are also bad. They had Connor Bedard, but they were also terrible this last season. I think they picked like second or third. So the hope is that maybe it's going to be the Bears. I mean, the Bears again have basically never had a good quarterback, like ever. You've had the Justin Fields thing didn't work out. Mitch Trubisky didn't work out. So now you get Caleb Williams, and they've built a really nice team around him. Just crossing those fingers that the Bears QB curse does not also befall Caleb Williams because if that happens, like Chicago sports will get even more miserable than it already is.
Well, I'm a Vikings fan, but I'll be rooting for Justin Fields. I definitely not Justin Fields. I'm sorry. Wow, what a Freudian slip. I will be rooting for Caleb Williams. Definitely hope the best for him and hope he can be as big of a star as he possibly can because he looks like he can be definitely a very, very big superstar with his personality and all, and with his style of play. First and foremost, Jason, I want to ask you about DeMar DeRozan. We've talked a lot about just him on the floor and his possible impact, but it seems to me like off the floor, you will not hear a single person have a single bad thing to say about this guy. I know he was working out with Dalen Terry or brought him to the Drew League as well. What does DeMar bring off the floor in terms of his character?
Yeah, I mean, DeMar, true professional, great leader. He's obviously done all that work with the mental health stuff as well. He's kind of been a leader in that regard there too. I know he did a lot of stuff just with the Bulls in terms of their training camps. I know they made a big deal about I can't remember even where they went to training camp last year, but it was a big deal about kind of leaving the Chicago area and like going to camps. And he's worked out with the young guys. You mentioned Dalen Terry. He's done stuff with Patrick Williams, Kobe White, all those guys. And I think he's definitely definitely think that DeMar's presence probably helped Kobe White's development both on and off the court. It's just leadership stuff and just working with him during the offseason, helping the skill development, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, obviously DeMar's been in the league for a long time. You know what he brings on the court, but off the court too. Yeah, I mean, he's just a true pro. Like I said, a good veteran leader, voice to have. Obviously, bring that to Sacramento.
We're joined by Jason Patt, editorial director for Clutch Points, co-host of Cash Considerations podcast focused on the Chicago Bulls. Brendan here, Jason. Thanks for hopping on the show, man. You just mentioned the way that DeMar's kind of helped out some of the young guys. I think a point of concern when it comes to Sacramento's perspective is Keegan Murray being such a focal point of this team and him needing to take the next steps growing forward. Would you mind just diving a little bit more into how you noticed DeMar helping these guys and your faith in his willingness to obviously play a role and step up when need be, but recognize a moment of, Kobe White had a huge game last year, hits a game winner at the end, and DeMar's willing to kind of play back seat there. How would you imagine, and what's your thought on how he can help Keegan Murray develop?
Yeah, I mean, just like in terms of just working with guys and like doing the off season kind of stuff and just like that kind of thing, I think will be helpful. So we saw that happen in Chicago, where he kind of took those young guys under his wing. Then again, off-season workouts during the season, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, we saw Kobe, especially after Zach LaVine went out, kind of opened a spot for Kobe to slide in next to DeMar as a primary scoring option, primary ball handler. And we saw Kobe just take a huge step. And it definitely was. There was one big point of contention among Bulls fans for sure last year was that. DeMar was so good in the clutch and won the Bulls so many clutch games, but I know a lot of fans were like, "Oh, I want to see more Kobe down in crunch time. I want to see more Kobe," and it still was mostly DeMar, and that will be interesting to watch, considering De'Aaron Fox is also a great crunch time player. You talk about Keegan Murray and having him develop. So how they kind of divvy that up will be interesting to see in terms of again who's got the ball. when it matters in crunch time? Is Keegan Murray going to have to take a step back? Is DeMar going to have to take his own step back? I think he probably will have to, going to just a better team with a guy like De'Aaron Fox, with a young guy like Keegan Murray. So we'll be soon to see. I mean, again, DeMar is such a professional, and if he wants to win, I mean, he's been with the Bulls here. Obviously, things just did not go very well. They only won one playoff game. You'd hope that DeMar at this point, he's 35, would be willing to take a step back and kind of let those young guys shine at times. But there will definitely be times. I mean, I think the Kings last year blew a bunch of games. Against the Bulls, I think they blew like a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter, and DeMar outscored them himself in the fourth quarter. When those things happen, and if the game starts getting away from them, and you need someone to just kind of like settle things down, slow the pace down, go get you a bucket. DeMar can do that for you. So like having that option there alongside a guy like De'Aaron Fox, and also with Keegan Murray, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think DeMar, if all goes well, I could see it working.
Jason, I'm curious. I mean, in the research that I was doing when DeMar initially got moved here, it seemed as if there was some questions about DeMar's fit even in Chicago initially. Couldn't find the specifics, so if you could provide what specifically did people have concerns about his fit when he first initially arrived in Chicago, and then did those fit questions end up being accurate, or was it kind of overblown? Because it does feel like here right now in Sacramento, a lot of people have questions about DeMar's fit, and really, I mean, there was an ESPN poll the other day from GMs and scouts saying that DeMar might have been one of the worst moves of the offseason, specifically because of the fit here in Sacramento.
Yeah, so I think the initial pushback with the Bulls DeMar signing was just the contract they gave him. It was like, I think it was 3 years, $81 million, and like there were rumors at the time like, oh, is DeMar gonna like take the mid-level with the Clippers or the Lakers, and then like the Bulls come in over the top with this $27 million a year offer, and it's like, oh, I mean, that's just way too much for a 31, 32-year-old DeMar DeRozan who had kind of been toiling and with the Spurs on like whatever mediocre to bad Spurs teams. It's like, oh, DeMar's just like not that guy anymore. And then the first season in Chicago, he was absolutely incredible. The Bulls were first in the East for about 3/4 of the way through the season. They were, I think, like 20 games over 500 or something like that. And then the Lonzo Ball injury obviously hurt, and they kind of fell apart down the stretch. But DeMar himself was incredible, and he had a string of clutch performances, and he was going in like Michael Jordan territory with like his 40-point games on like 50% shooting. I mean, the first year he was incredible. He definitely has taken a bit of a step back, but even last year, again, he won them so many games. The Bulls had the one of the best clutch records in the league last year. He was one of the leaders in the NBA in clutch plus minus. He was second, I think, in clutch scoring behind Steph Curry. I think he was second in that clutch award. So he won them so many games. And like in terms of like the fit with the Bulls, there were, I think, some do him and Zach LaVine fit together? And there was, I think, some kind of push-pull going on there. Because Zach had been with the Bulls for a while, and he was kind of the top guy, and then DeMar came in there and kind of took that away from him. But obviously, like, Zach LaVine has never won anything with the Bulls, really good player. But we kind of have seen how things have played out with him and how he's viewed around the league. So, like, I think DeMar, like, kind of taking like that alpha spot from him might have maybe caused some ruffles there, and there have been questions about if they're the best fit. But I mean, again, the Bulls just haven't been very good. I don't think it was DeMar's fault. I mean, the problem is if like DeMar's your best player, like you're not going to be that good at this point because he has flaws, and in the NBA that is all about 3-point shooting. Like DeMar's just not a 3-point shooter, and if the Bulls didn't shoot many threes in general, and some of that is because DeMar's heavy usage. So, like, some of the inherent flaws of his game are just going to limit your ceiling. But, like, overall, as what he gave the Bulls was incredible. Way more than I ever thought he would. And you look at the Kings, like, I know the Kings kind of tried the run-it-back thing last year, the continuity, which the Bulls also tried again this season. That didn't work. And it kind of backfired on the Kings. They kind of just stagnated. They obviously did not make the top 8 after losing in the play-in. And if you look at, like, the options this offseason, like, I know there were like Brandon Ingram rumors, and there's like the Lauri Markkanen rumors, but like given what they like gave up to get DeMar, like I feel like getting DeMar is, if you're going to choose between like DeMar and Brandon Ingram at this point, like paying Brandon Ingram, I feel like what they did to sign DeMar makes plenty of sense. Again, I do understand the fit questions, as I kind of mentioned before, when you have Fox and Sabonis and Murray there already. But in terms of just like a pure talent level like play, I think it made some sense given the alternatives there. The Kings had to do something. Could it backfire? Because again, he's 35, sure, and there are some fit questions. But I mean, DeMar has been durable. Again, he's a clutch savant still, and I don't think that's going to like go away this season. Again, he's going to age and decline somewhat, but given there's some other good players there with Fox and Sabonis, and having some other guys that take some pressure off him, that should hopefully help him. So while I do understand some of the fit questions, I also get why the Kings made the move, and I totally understand why they'd rather have done that as opposed to trading for someone like Brandon Ingram, who's kind of similar. He's like a younger version of DeMar, but probably not as good and injury prone. So it will be fascinating to see how it plays out though, given just after watching DeMar for 3 years here and seeing just like how much better that he was than I was thinking, if he'll be able to translate that to Sacramento.
Yeah, Jason, I think that in that debate that you mentioned between considering contracts with Ingram seemed to be something that was going on internally as well with a lot of these other guys too, whether you want to throw Kuzma in there or Lauri Markkanen and those conversations as well. But one other thing you mentioned is kind of when Lonzo was there, how they were really clicking. And that's when the Bulls were playing really fast. And DeMar has never been on a top 10 pace team. The closest he's gotten is his rookie year under Jay Triano, reaching 11th. Obviously something the Kings really try to do with what is probably one of, if not the fastest players in the league in De'Aaron Fox. And it's not just full court, but also half court as well. And obviously DeMar, a guy that sometimes will take a dribble or two and kind of catch a rhythm. So curious what you saw on those teams when Lonzo was healthy and they're running the floor really well, how DeMar fit into that, because sometimes you can almost get a title of a ball stopper in a way, which is just probably a little harsh, but slows down the pace a bit. So what did you see when he was on that team where Chicago was playing fast?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look back at the pace stats. Like, I don't think they were playing like super fast, but I mean, the ball was definitely moving. I mean, Lonzo was just like a great connecting piece between all those guys with DeMar, Zach, and Vooch. And they have kind of a nice little thing going with all those guys in that lineup, and it really just all clicked. And again, DeMar would just close games out for him. He was, and that is like, you talk about the playing fast and all that, like games just naturally slow down though in those fourth quarters, and that kind of brings back to like whatever the game speeds up, it's fast throughout. You want to play like that, but when you need to slow that game down and need to control the ball and control those games in crunch time. Like that's where I think DeMar will still really shine. It will be will be interesting to see how he does fit with playing up tempo with Fox. Like I think I'm sure DeMar will not want to play like 40. And DeMar played like 40 minutes a game for the last like 3 or 4 months of the season last year, which is crazy. I think he'll probably be looking forward to playing a little less, and that should hopefully help him work into a faster playing style. And again, he's a smart passer as well. So like, it's not like he's like just like, does he slow the ball down? Sometimes yes, but he can make the right reads and make the right passes and move the ball pretty well. Because again, is he going to be running up and down the court like some of these other guys? No. But as long as he's not just like constantly pounding the ball into the ground, and just making the right reads and making the right passes, which he can do. I think he's a bit underrated as a passer still. I think he can kind of work into that high pace. Because again, we did see it with the Bulls when they had Lonzo and the ball was moving better and Lonzo was kind of running that point. So I think he could definitely still do it. And again, then when the game does slow down in the fourth quarter, when the playoffs come around, naturally, again, the pace kind of slows down there too. I know DeMar's had some playoff concerns, but again, that's more as like a top option, and now he's not going to be quite that anymore. Then having that guy who can kind of control pace and slow things down when needed, control the ball, not turn the ball over, not make bad decisions, DeMar should be able to help that. So there'll be some kind of a good like balance there between Fox looking to play fast, and then DeMar being there and it can slow the pace down when needed too.
Jason Pat, thank you so much for joining us, editorial director for Clutch Points and co-host of the Cash Considerations podcast focusing on the Chicago Bulls. Absolutely fantastic insight from you, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be wishing you and the city of Chicago sports luck this entire rest of this season. So thank you so much for joining us, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm hoping as well that we can see some bright light in Chicago sports. This has been really tough. I'm luckily not a White Sox fan, but I'm a Cubs fan, and they've been miserable too. So it's been a brutal summer of Chicago sports. So definitely hoping for better luck moving forward.
Definitely. We'll be rooting for it with you as well. Thank you so much, Jason. Again, editorial director for Clutch Points and co-host of the Cash Considerations podcast. One Jason Patt. Appreciate you, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of interesting stuff in there. We'll definitely get to that. The DeMar versus Brandon Ingram conversation, I definitely think is an interesting one. But coming up next, we are going to talk some Noah Lyles, and we'll dive into it. What is a world champion, and should